Nicholas Thompson. I'm an editor at the New Yorker magazine. David described me as working at the New York Times, which is close but not quite right, a little bit like me describing David as English. In any case, I run the website at the New Yorker and oversee its tablet, and I also help found a software publishing startup called The Atavist. But I'm here to moderate a panel on what's happening in Syria, and I would like to bring onto stage Mazen Asbahi. He's the president of the Syrian Support Group. It's a licensed NGO that works with the Department of Defense to provide non-lethal aid to the Free Syrian Army, so communications equipment, trucks. So he's a moderate man providing moderate stuff to the moderates in this war. He's also a lawyer by training. He's worked at Kirkland & Ellis, and he's an honors graduate from the Northwestern School of Law. So Mazen, please come on stage. All right, Mazen, so let's have a nice little segue from our previous presentation. So in March of 2011, protests start in Syria, and they're nonviolent. They begin with a day of dignity. They appear to be following on what we saw in Tunisia. They appear to be nonviolent resistance against Assad. Social media is being used to name the protest. It's everything that the people in this room like and want. Within 2 months, we have war, and then we have a war that's gone on for ever since then, since May of 2011, and 100,000 people are dead. What went wrong?
What went wrong was the reaction of the Assad regime to the peaceful protests. They brought out snipers. They went on a campaign of mass arrests. They instituted a campaign of sexual violence against men and women. They ordered their military units to fire on the peaceful protests. And I'm all for the nonviolent movement, and I only wish and pray that the uprising in Syria would have followed on that course. But when the orders were given to shoot at the protesters, you started to see a trend of soldiers who simply said, I won't shoot my own people. And they defected at risks to their lives and to their families. And they went on and formed the Free Syrian Army. And this isn't just 1, 2, 10. These are thousands of Syrian National Army officers at various ranks.
So we're gonna have a chance to go through what's happened in the war with our next guest. But let me ask you about the last 3 weeks, which have been a period of intense interest. So August 21st, there's a chemical weapons attack. Fairly clear from the beginning that it's Assad. Obama says that we will go in with strikes. Then suddenly, will the British turn on us? Maybe we won't go with strikes. Maybe we'll go to Congress. Then actually, no, we're not going to strike. And then yesterday in the papers, one of the men from the Syrian army said, the revolution is dead. It is sold. Assad is now a hero who saved the country. Tell me about your emotions over the past 2 weeks.
Wow. The last couple of weeks have been a roller coaster ride, both emotionally and intellectually. We were 100% sure that the strikes were going to happen, and I think everyone else was too. And the commanders on the ground from the Free Syrian Army were in communications with parties within the U.S. government regarding targets and how to react to the strikes. And I remember I was driving on my way to a wedding of 2 Syrian Americans in Chicago, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to keep the radio on so when the hits hit, I'll know. And I wonder how that's going to affect the wedding. Will everybody be extremely, extremely happy, or will it be somewhat subdued? Because even the notion of strikes in Syria is something that's difficult for Syrians to come to terms with, but I think that the vast majority were actually favorable towards it as a means of keeping Assad accountable for his war crimes. So yeah, I think now with the agreement in Russia, there's a significant deflation with the Free Syrian Army and the moderate 'moderate' 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 ' They feel like Assad's getting off scot-free, and even the agreement between Russia and the United States does not include a clear mechanism for accountability for those that launched this heinous chemical weapons attack.
All right, thank you. Our special guest is ready. We have a special guest joining us in a hangout from an undisclosed location. We have Major Issam Al-Reyes. He is a defector from the Syrian National Army and now a senior official with the Supreme Military Council, which is the umbrella leadership structure of the Free Syrian Army. He's also a 1998 graduate of the Aleppo Military Academy with a degree in electrical engineering. So please welcome Major Issam Al-Reyes. Thank you. Major Al-Reyes, you served under Assad for quite a while. Tell me about when you decided to defect and why.
Actually, I've been outside the training course when the Assad gave the orders to shoot the people. As you mentioned, I graduated in 1998 and worked in the Assad army for approximately 20 years. Now we are in 2013. I decided to defect as soon as I see the people killed by the snipers of the army. We joined the army not to kill the people, and many of my friends agree with me the same and defected before me. I defected in June 2012, and the important thing is I did it because I want to defend the people. I agree with Mr. Mazen that the revolution never killed. And it will stay on even if the political situation changed.
So you were given an order in June of 2011 to shoot protesters. You said, no, I'm leaving. You join your colleagues. You move geographically, and you begin leading the resistance.
Yes.
Now tell me about the situation on the ground right now. As Mazen said, there's been a lot of deflation among the Free Syrian Army. Tell me about your mood and tell me about what exactly is happening.
Okay, I'll tell you in the last 2 weeks where the situation were growing so fast because of the political situation, but everything in the ground is staying on. You can ask some soldiers, some officers on the ground, they are not, they don't care, they are fighting to fall down the Assad regime. First, we feel that when Obama said he will attack the Assad regime. Nobody like to attack his country, of course. We are talking about Assad regime, exactly. Mr. Obama said he's going to attack just the Assad army in some points, limited points, and that's what we want, exactly. Everything in the ground is going on. We are now better than first. We are few officers and soldiers. Now we are thousands. At least we are 200 working just in the military council command. And we are feeling that we are improving on the ground.
In June of this year, there was a very controversial debate in this country about whether to send you arms. Eventually, the Obama administration decided through the CIA, not through Mazen, to send you weapons. But reports are that they did not arrive or have not arrived. Have you received any?
I know that from the first we know that Assad will use everything. When he starts sniping the people, we know that he is going to transfer the tanks inside the city, and we know that the aircraft will start working, and the next step will be the chemical weapons. We were sure 100% that the chemical weapons used by the regime, and we know that it's going to use another time. Even if Assad tells that he's going to deliver all his chemical weapons, because we believe that it's just a trick and just to change the view from people about what Assad is doing and killing his people. He just make this a deal to have much time to kill more people, and as much as the time is going on, the problem is getting better. larger.
Why do you think it took Assad so long in the conflict to carry out a major attack with those chemical weapons?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, if you were very confident from the beginning that Assad would eventually use the chemical weapons stockpile that he even denied having, yet he didn't for quite a long time, or he used it in only small-scale attacks, and it wasn't until a year and a half into the conflict that he carried out a major attack. Why then?
Can I try?
Please.
Well, I think what we saw with the Ghouta attacks, or the attacks in East Damascus, where there was a significant increase in the scale of the use of chemical weapons, was perhaps a dumb decision by Assad, in the sense that it finally did generate the type of concern that we've been calling upon the international community to show, and advocating for, as you know, the principle of responsibility to protect civilians. Why did he do it? The areas that he attacked our opposition held, and they are very close to the center of Damascus, within 6 miles of where the UN inspectors were actually staying. And I think that he had been trying through conventional means to push out the Free Syrian Army from those areas, but had been unsuccessful.
All right. Major Al-Reyes, if I want to come back to you to ask a question about the Free Syrian Army and its composition. So one of the great fears in this country is we don't know whether the people we're supporting are real or our allies. So the FSA, which you're a part of, is fighting alongside al-Nusra, which has sworn allegiance to Al-Qaeda, sworn to destroy the United States. There are a number of other radical Islamic organizations working towards the same goals of eliminating the Assad regime. How can we in the United States have confidence that by supporting you, we're not also supporting our sworn enemies?
Okay, first of all, I heard the question, what you thought of Mr. Mazen. I agree with him. These places which attacked with the chemical weapons was forbidden for Assad many times. He tried to attack it more than 20 times, and he failed in that. So it was the only possible way to attack it with chemical weapons, and he tried after it to bomb it many times and try to attack by his soldiers. About the other question, I want just to give you a view. You know, we are as Syrian, I describe the Syrian as middle Muslim. Everybody describes them as this. We live together in a variety, social variety, with a lot of religion for thousands of years, and this is the situation. Because the revolution takes a lot of time and nobody helped the Syrian people, of course, we lost the borders, and the regime lost the borders, and a lot of people enter Syria, and now they are inside. But I want to tell you that there are, until now, few. There are just not more than 5,000, all the extremists, I mean. There are not more than 5,000. So we are sure that it will be easy for all the people who said no and shout in the face of Assad to shout in other faces with the other groups. I believe that Syrians don't like to stay to keep the Qaeda and also other fighters from other countries inside Syria.
So I have heard the argument from people in the FSA or people in Syria that Obama's decision not to launch missile strikes will help al-Nusra recruit more people and will actually hurt your ability to recruit, because the United States, this great powerful country which was supposed to be aligned with you, has not done the strikes that many people thought were forthcoming. Is that helping al-Nusra's recruitment? Is it going to lead to al-Nusra growing to more than 5,000 fighters, al-Nusra and its other radical Islamic allies?
Let me explain a little things about al-Nusra themselves. Yes, al-Nusra is a branch of Al-Qaeda. That's true, but you know, we are not worried from al-Nusra who is Syrian who joined al-Nusra. They joined al-Nusra just because they need support, they need some help. they need some weapons to fight against Assad. And at the end, they are Syrians. And I explained to you what the meaning of Muslims is in Syria, and the history tells you that. But about Obama's strike, how he said about strike, we don't prefer that to strike anybody else. We can manage ourselves against these fighters. We are not going to fight them. They will agree as the people what they want, and also we just ask for the regime places to be bombed, not more than this.
Now,
can I add a couple points? There were a couple things that you said that I just wanted to address for clarification. One is the notion that we don't know who we're supporting in Syria. We've been working for 2 years directly with our friends at the Department of State and other agencies within the U.S. government to connect them with fighters at every level, from the senior generals who've defected to the local community neighborhood defense committees. And Ambassador Ford and other key figures in the U.S. administration have been in communication. There's an active CIA effort, covert effort to train Free Syrian Army soldiers in the north and in the south, in Jordan, which has been reported in the Wall Street Journal and other newspapers. So I don't believe in that notion that we don't know. We do know. Number two, the idea that the Free Syrian Army coordinates or collaborates with the extremists. Now, on the tactical level on the ground, it is true over the prior period that you can't stop a group coming and joining you while you're fighting the regime and being attacked and trying to defend neighborhoods. But the division between the extremists and the moderate fighters has become more pronounced in the last few weeks and the last few months, especially as U.S. support to the Free Syrian Army has become more robust. Why? Because they fear U.S. support to the moderate element within the opposition. And they've actually killed now 2 or 3 senior FSA commanders, and in public areas like Raqqa, which is in the east, the community there has had protests against these extremists, saying we don't want to exchange one dictator for another just to get this Taliban-esque version of Islam, which is so foreign to Syria. And for those who may not know, Syria is an extremely diverse country in the Arab world. Only 70% of Syrians are Orthodox or Sunni Muslims. You have almost 10% of the population Christian. Some of the oldest churches in the world are in Syria. And they've continued to this day to be vibrant communities. And many in the Christian community, we were talking about this earlier, are on the sidelines. They're fearful of what might happen. But there are also Christians in large numbers as the leadership of the political opposition. And there are Christians who fight with the Free Syrian Army as well. So it isn't, Assad has tried to play the sectarian game, because he comes from a sect called the Al-Reyes, and the Al-Reyes are predominant in the security sector and in the military. And he's made the argument to them that if I go down, you will go down. And General Salim Idris, who's the elected leader of the Free Syrian Army, as well as all of the political leaders, have made it clear to the Al-Reyes that this isn't a sectarian fight, even if Assad's tactics have been to fan those flames.
Excellent. Major Al-Reyes, I want to return to chemical weapons. There are some people who make the argument that killing somebody with a chemical weapon is no different from killing them with a gun. And in fact, the massacre in late August was larger, but not in kind worse than the previous massacres that Assad had carried out. If you were to capture a Syrian military base and defeat the army and discover a large stockpile of chemical weapons, what would you do with them? Would you use them in the conflict? Would you turn them over?
Actually, there's no difference to kill with a chemical weapon or another, but this is, this is not an allowed weapon, and especially when you use it against civil people. Also, the chemical weapons is forbidden in all the world. It's it's one of the forbidden weapons in the world. If I've been in this situation, I will not, of course, agree to use it. And if I understand the question very well, if I have been a commander in a base military station, and you mean I have an order to use this chemical weapons, I will not use it, of course. The chemical weapons used by special forces from the Assad army, not everybody accepts to use it. Also, even the soldiers inside the army now, the Syrian Assad army, they will not agree to use this chemical weapons. But there's just a few people who have these chemical weapons and have the order to use it, and have they are responsible to use such weapons inside the army. Nobody knows details about chemical weapons. Even if I've been an officer in the army, that don't mean I know the details about the chemical weapons. That's clear to everybody. And just a few people have these weapons, and Bashar Assad is the only one who can give the order to use these weapons. That's it all.
Right. Tell me what you hope the end game is. Do you hope to see power sharing? Do you hope to see Assad in prison? Tell me a likely, plausible scenario for 2 years that is encouraging to you.
Of course, I'd like to see Assad in prison because he's a killer. For me, the favorite scenario to see is to fall down Assad family. I'm not talking about all the government. I want Syria to stay as it is, and we are going to build it again. Even if there's, because of the 2 years, it faces a lot of problems and a lot of extremists inside. We can manage it until now. And I want to view some points. Mr. Martin talked about it. We don't know how they are supported. I mean, the fight inside Syria. And if you don't support the Free Syrian Army, I mean America, that will make a lot of people fighting inside the Free Syrian Army think to go and fight inside these groups. Because I told you before, they go just to have some support, some weapons. They don't believe in how they think, and they are not connected with the commanders of the Al-Qaeda. They are just fighters on the ground, as it describes to you when you are fighting the regime. And somebody tells you to fight, you will not fight him, of course. He is helping you. You feel he's helping you. That's what's happening with the Syrian soldiers. The Syrian soldiers, the Free Syrian Army, if they don't find enough support, if they don't find enough weapons, they will force to go inside these groups, and that's what we don't want to do.
All right, last question quickly. We're speaking with a room full of very powerful technology executives. This is a conflict that has played out in some ways over social media. We all watched the chemical weapons attacks on YouTube. What would you say to them? What technology could they create? What should they do that would help your cause?
Of course, it was saying that this is on YouTube, and all of us saw what happened. I want to say to the world, I want to tell the world, please help the Syrians. Assad will use the chemical weapons again. Twice, and other time he will use it again. I am sure he will use it again, because we said that many times. We said that Assad was going to use the aircraft, and nobody believed us, and he did it. And now we are telling everybody in the world. We told you that Assad is going, and there's no doubt, because the inspector's report was clear. Assad used the chemical weapons, and it was also positioned where the places it's bombed from. It's under control of Assad's regime. It's inside a battalion of Assad's regime. So we are telling the people, please help the people, the Syrian people, stop killing, stop Assad, not to use the chemical weapons or other weapons, stop killing the Syrian people. That's what I want to tell the world.
All right. Thank you very much, Major Al-Reyes. Thank you, Mazen. Thank you, Google, for organizing this hangout.
Thank you.